right. So let me just.
Absolutely. So welcome again to this session about motivation and temperament and goal and core needs. And so our facilitator today, our presenter is Catherine Stothart. And Catherine is a leadership coach with Airbus and a partner in Google's Mastery Faculty of Virtual Facilitators. She has written 2 business books based on type, How to Get On with Anyone, and based on interaction styles and motivation, the ultimate guide to leading your team based on temperament. So yeah, in this session, Catherine's going to be exploring the links between motivation and well-being and what happens for people of each temperament when these needs get out of balance, leading to stress and dysfunction, and what works for each temperament to bring balance and well-being back to our lives. Yeah. So without further ado, Catherine, you can take it away.
Lovely. Thank you, Nathan, and welcome everybody. It's nice to see some familiar faces here and some new faces too. So thanks for coming along to this session. So I've called this session Life a Balancing Act, and I'm going to use the temperament model to talk about motivation and well-being. We have different parts of our lives. We have our work, our home lives, our family and friends, our pastimes, our hobbies, and so on. And we need to have those different parts of our lives in balance so that one is not dominating the others. And we need to meet our core needs through those parts of our lives. And when we do that, we can be both motivated and have well-being. So I'm going to start with a quotation from Carol Izard, who is an American research psychologist. Happiness comes from using your signature strengths in the main realms of your life. So basically, we are happy and we have well-being when we're able to use our strengths and talents, when we're able to meet our core needs in the different parts of our lives. And basically, when we can manage our lives in such a way that we can do more of what energizes and motivates us and less of what drains us. And for me, motivation and well-being go together. So, you know, you can be very driven and be very motivated, but that can be stressful and lead to burnout if you don't look after your well-being. You can have high well-being, which can be all very comfortable and so on, but ultimately becomes boring if you don't have a sense of purpose. And I think that temperament helps us understand both what motivates us in terms of meeting our core needs and also what we have to do to maintain our well-being. So that was sort of by way of introduction, and I'm going to just run a quick poll. So basically, and I think most people in this room are fairly knowledgeable, but basically I'd like to know how much you know about temperament. You might be new to or know a little about it. You might know it quite well, or you might know it very well and use it with clients. Okay. So we've got quite a nice mixture there. So I'm just making a note. So 27% say they're new. It's changing a bit. 33% say quite well. And I think 42% know it pretty well. That's great. Thank you. So we can end that poll, Nathan. And then I'd just like to, do we need to share the results?
Would you like me to share the results?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Alrighty.
Go on. Okay.
So it's pretty almost even, but a little leaning towards knowing it well and using with clients.
Yeah, brilliant. And then I'm just going to go on to my next slide. I presume I am still screen sharing. I think I am. So the next question, the next poll is which temperament fits you best? So I've got the Kiersey names and Linda Berran's names on here. So artisan improviser or SP, the type pattern, guardian stabilizer or the SJ preferences, rational theorist, NT preferences, idealist, catalyst, NF. And unsurprisingly, we have no artisan SP preferences in the room. Sorry, I better give it another minute just for everybody to complete. But then
we
if
have
you'd like
14 responses.
Okay,
Everyone
great.
did.
Great.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to share the results then, Nathan. So high proportion of catalyst, 64%, theorist, 14%, stabilizer, 21%. That's great. And sadly, no artisans. Okay, we can stop sharing that now then, please. Great, so that gives me an idea of who's in the room. Let me just find my slides again on my screen, which are here. So what am I going to talk about? I sort of did a little introduction. We've done a poll, and now I just want to give you a flavour of what I'm going to talk about. I will give you a little bit of the background to temperament, particularly for people who are new to it. Then I'm going to talk about motivation as a combination of purpose, persistence, and resilience. And in terms of purpose, the core needs and stresses of each temperament. And when we go into breakout groups a little bit later on, I'm going to use the wheel of life to link motivation, temperament, and well-being together. And obviously we'll have time for questions and discussions. If there are any burning questions as I'm going through, feel free to raise your hand or an unmute or whatever, and Nathan can keep an eye on that for me if I don't notice. So very briefly, some of the background to temperament. The way I tend to describe it is it's a way of collapsing down the 16 personality types into 4 groups of 4 that are particularly relevant to motivation. A bit like with interaction styles, you can collapse the 16 personality types into a different 4 sets of 4 that are relevant to communication. So this is a way of bringing types together that have similar patterns of behavior and are motivated by similar things. So it's we just have 4 temperaments. And then the background to it, so goes right back to the ancient Greeks. So Hippocrates in 450 BC came up with this idea of the humours in the body, the fluids in the body that affect our behaviour. And this was well known into the Middle Ages. So Chaucer in the Canterbury Tales describes some of his pilgrims in terms of their temperament, their behaviours. So, you know, sanguine, choleric, melancholic, and I think phlegmatic is the other one. And then David Keirsey with Marilyn Bates in the 20th century brought this up to date. And Please Understand Me was actually one of the first books I read about type or type related after I'd qualified in the MBTI back in 1993. And then more recently, Linda Behrens, of course, has built on that work and developed it and extended it. And she now calls temperament essential motivators. But it's very much stood the test of time. People have always been fascinated by other people and by behavior. And what temperament does is make us aware of the core psychological needs of our personalities that drive our behavior, and basically why we do what we do and how these come out in our patterns of behavior. However, I think motivation is a bit more than meeting our core needs. So for me, motivation is about 3 things. It's about purpose. So having something important to us that causes us to do something, but it's also about how hard you try, which is persistence, and how long you keep trying for, which is resilience. And temperament as a model gives us insights into all 3 of these areas. And I'm going to show you how that works shortly. So I'll talk about all 3 of the areas. Start with purpose. So purpose is having something meaningful to you, which moves you to action. So 2 years ago, you know, my purpose, if you like, was to write this book. But purpose is also something that's more stable and enduring. So it is that inner drive to fulfill our core needs. And we believe that the main core needs that we all share as human beings are the need for competence, the need for freedom, the need for belonging, and the need to fulfill our potential. And those of you who are familiar with temperament will probably already be seeing the read across here to temperament. But let me say a little bit more about purpose first. So as you can see from the quotes on this slide, there's loads of evidence that purpose, having a sense of purpose, is really essential for our well-being and our mental health. And 26% of people who retire later unretire because they need to find something. And I can see Tim and Anne Marsden reacting to that comment there. You know, you need something purposeful in your life. Simon Sinek talks about, you know, fulfillment coming when you live your lives on purpose. And Daniel Levitin talks about staying busy, but not with trivial pursuits, but with things that are meaningful to you. So it's really important to have that sense of purpose and to know how to fulfill your needs, those core needs, in how you run your life on a day-to-day basis, really. So that's a little bit on purpose generally. Who has heard of Maslow? Yeah, everybody has heard of Maslow. And when I work with groups of managers, most managers have heard of Maslow. However, most of them do not have a clue what self-actualization is. So I usually describe it in terms of people, fulfilling your potential or helping other people fulfill their potential. Who has heard of Ryan and Deci? Oh, Catherine has, good. Nathan, yeah, a few people, but fewer people tend to have heard of Ryan and Deci. So they, American, I think, researchers, they have a theory called self-determination theory, and they talk about 3 other core needs. And they refer to them as autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So, if you combine the work of Ryan and Deci with Maslow, you have these four core needs. Our core needs to fulfill our potential, our need to have some choice and freedom over what we do and when we do it, our need to feel competent and be respected for our competence, and our need to belong and feel liked, I guess. So, it's important as individuals to know, well, how do I fulfill these needs in my life? And if you can fulfill them, then you have greater well-being. But also we know from temperament that usually one of them is more important to us. And that these different needs lead to different patterns of behavior. So what I'm going to do now is just run through those 4 temperaments, linking them to these core needs, and to have a quick look at how these come out in different patterns of behavior. So starting with people whose core need, the strongest core need, if you like, is for freedom. And that's the improvisers, or people with the SP preferences. Unfortunately, nobody here with that preference today, so I can't validate with them that this makes sense. I certainly hope it does. So for people with this as their core need, their top motivator, they want the freedom to act and make an immediate concrete impact. They like to deal swiftly with whatever comes up and get impressive quick results. They can act in the moment, they have tactical skills, they're confident troubleshooters and so on. And if they're leaders, they sort of expect other people to react quickly too, which sometimes can cause conflict if the people working for them don't react quickly. So they get their sense of purpose and are energized when they can act in the moment to resolve problems. And they feel stressed when they're constrained by rules and procedures. Now, although we haven't got any improvisers in this room, I've coached a number of improvisers over the years, and one that sticks in my mind was a guy that worked for a water company. He had the improviser motivation pattern when there was a water leakage or a sewage leakage. And by the way, we're having far too many of those in the UK at the moment. He would be straight on it and would solve it, and it would be sorted. There was lots of conflict between him and his SJ stabilizer colleague, who wanted to take it a bit more slowly, to check through the procedures, to make sure they put mechanisms in place so that it couldn't happen again, and so on. And that sort of, and again, I can see some nods in the people here, that sort of, and I know the person, Tim, who's nodding is an ISTJ, so I'm glad you're agreeing with that a little bit there, Tim. That caused a lot of conflict and stress. One wants to get in and solve it, the other one wants to put some procedures in place. So that's the improviser motivation pattern. Let's go on to the stabilizers. So their core need, their top motivator, is that need to belong. They want to do their duty for a group, they want to feel part of a group, and they have a strong sense of responsibility. They respect tradition, they like structure and consistency. They're very dependable. If you want something done, ask a stabilizer to do it. So they get their sense of purpose from contributing to the group and feeling that they belong. And they enjoy being of service to others. So they're energized when they feel part of a team. and they're stressed when they're not able to contribute. And I see this coming out in a number of my sort of friends and colleagues. I have a friend, ESFJ, who will do anything for our friendship group. If we want her to organise a trip away or a meet up in the pub, she'll organise it as long as she feels that we all wanted to and appreciate her for it. My husband, who's ISTJ, is on the committee of a social club. He's also a trustee of 2 charities. And again, he's the one who's dependable, responsible, keeps the wheels of those organizations turning, and likes to be appreciated for it and feels stressed if he can't contribute. So what I'm trying to do here is just give you a sense of some of the people I've come across who have these sort of different patterns of behavior. So then we go on to people with a high need for competence. And interestingly, Catherine Hirsch's session that preceded this one, competence and excellence came up amongst the NT, the theorists in the group, as a really strong value that we share. So people with this as their core value want to reach mastery and they want to contribute to progress. They like to be knowledgeable and have their expertise and share their expertise. They want to improve things, and they sort of expect others to show initiative. They often improve systems and processes. So they're energized by opportunities to innovate and contribute to progress, and they're stressed by routine demands on their time. So I can think of somebody that I coached at Airbus a couple of years ago who was head of a maintenance function. He was fantastic with new technology. He was fantastic at bringing in new methods of work, new technology to manage the maintenance processes and procedures in the Airbus factory where they make wings for all the Airbus aircraft. But he got extremely drained by having to attend lots of meetings, by having to do lots of reporting, by having to know the ins and outs of why something had broken down or not worked properly. And, you know, a lot of our coaching was spent around trying to find ways for him to minimize the ways those drained his energy and maximize his opportunities to contribute where he really could contribute his strengths and talents and fulfill that core need for competence. I will pause in a moment. I'll just do my fourth temperament, and then I will pause for any questions or discussions before I move on. So large number, 64%, I think, of people in this room have the NF or catalyst temperament. So they are motivated by that core need for potential or to help other people reach their potential. They want to be authentic, and interestingly, in Catherine's session, authenticity came up as the top value for people with this temperament. They want to help others be the best they can be. They like to have harmony. They like to make connections with others. And basically, they feel energized when they can help other people achieve their aspirations and when there's harmony between people. And they're stressed by conflict and criticism. And often, you know, we can get conflict between the theorist and the catalyst, because theorists tend to quite like debate and challenge, and catalysts tend not to like it if it feels that it's becoming personal. So that was a quick run through of the patterns of behavior that these 4 core needs lead to. So I'm going to pause them before I go on to see if there are any questions or comments about anything before I go on to talk about the other aspects of motivation. I haven't.
Catherine mentioned in the chat a professor that she encountered in university. Yep.
Go on. What was the I haven't looked at the chat. What was the professor?
It was just how they coped with people not jumping into a discussion, and there was just a bit of a lack of initiative that sort of frustrated her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and I see Stuart has his hand up.
Great.
Yes, just you've helped me understand my brother who has preferences for ISFP just a little bit better, because we chat almost on a daily basis. He's based in the UK. I'm based in New Zealand now, but we're still great friends. But he gets stressed, and I now begin to understand why. If I don't immediately respond to one of his messages. And so I've got a busy life. Sometimes I will always get round to replying to it, but it was confusing me. He knew I was moving house and changing job, and it was a whole week before I responded to a whole complex series of messages he sent me. He said, "Oh, it was obviously." He said, "Here's something like, what's the point of instant chat if you don't respond instantly?" And I explained it, and he was fine. But why did that stress him? And now I perhaps understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stuart. I mean, that's a great example, isn't it, of that core need, that temperament coming out, and what's important to us, we expect from others. So yeah.
It also means now that if I can't respond to him immediately, I can say, I'll get back to you later on that. That's probably all he needs, just to know that I've acknowledged the communication. So
yeah.
Already I've gained something. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Any other questions, Anne?
Well, my son, who's ENTP, gave me a little plaque to hang up in the kitchen saying, "I'm not bossy, I just have better ideas."
I love that. Yeah. Great. Okay. Any other comments or questions before I move on? Right. Let me move on then. So what I've tried to do there so far is give you a sense of, how these things come out in our patterns of behavior, how we expect other people to be like us, and of course they're not, but also how these four things are important to all of us, but usually for each of us one is more important than the others. But motivation, as I said at the beginning, is not just about this purpose and fulfilling our inner needs, our core needs. It's also about persistence and resilience. And actually each temperament needs different things to help them be persistent and resilient. So I'm going to say a little bit about both of those aspects before we go into some breakout groups. So persistence. So there's an official Oxford English Dictionary definition here. Persistence is defined as continue firmly or obstinately in an opinion or a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. So the focus here in persistence is on keeping going, sustaining effort during the task. So while you're involved in a project or a task or whatever, it's, what's going to help you sustain your effort. I define persistence as being able to manage your thoughts and beliefs and emotions to stay positive and confident. So it's about managing how you think and feel about things, because if you feel confident, you will perform better, you will keep going. If you don't feel confident, if you have unhelpful beliefs, unhelpful emotions, your confidence slips, your performance slips. So it's really important, I think, for managers, if you're managing other people, to give feedback and coach in a way that helps build people's sense of confidence and self-efficacy and not undermine it. But this next slide just has some generic tips on the sort of things you can do to maintain your own persistence when you need to give yourself a boost. So, positive self-talk, managing your mood by doing something that cheers you up, visualizing yourself behaving confidently, writing down 3 positive things at the end of a day, letting positive feedback sink in. When people give us nice feedback, we often skip over it. So these are all the small things you can do, but they will help you maintain your confidence, your sense of agency, your sense of self-efficacy, and enable you to maintain your persistence. There are some specific things for each temperament. So I'll give you a few examples, but in the handout that accompanies this session, there are a lot more examples. So something for theorists, NT preference, if they're struggling to get motivated on a task, doing a bit of mind mapping to capture their ideas is something that can help them. Perhaps talking it through with an expert, something else that can help them maintain their momentum and persistence. For the catalyst, NF, finding that connection to a greater purpose can help them maintain their persistence, and also perhaps sometimes checking out the practicality of their ideas with others, perhaps with people with the stabilizer temperament. For the stabilizers, things that help them maintain momentum is perhaps getting ideas from others. They can sometimes when they're losing momentum, they can sometimes run out of ideas of what to do next. So getting ideas from others. And I think something else that can help stabilizers is using to-do lists, both as a plan of what to do, but also as a record of what they've done. So it's a sort of record of achievement. And then for improvisers, the SP preference, building in some sense of fun or a contest, or having a visible way, a chart or something to demonstrate progress. So there's a few ideas there that may help different temperaments maintain their persistence. Say a little bit about resilience. So resilience is the ability to bounce back from the challenges and setbacks that life throws at us and maintain a positive outlook. For me, resilience is what you do outside the task. It's what you're doing in the rest of, the other parts of your life. It's how you're recharging your batteries in order to recover from setbacks and get going again. So it's really about looking after all aspects of your energy, your body, mind and spirit, your physical energy, your mental energy, your emotional energy. And on this slide, there's a reference to my SPICE quiz, which you can get for free on my website and in the resources hub. It's also in my first book, How to Get On With Anyone. So, and again, for each temperament, there are different things that help each temperament to maintain their resilience. So, for example, for a theorist like myself, having some time free of all those routine demands, the shopping, the washing, the children, the emails, the meetings, having that time free of those demands really, I think, helps people with a theorist temperament. Reading a book, learning something new maybe. For the catalyst, I think some face-to-face contact, time with loved ones, maybe a creative activity is something that helps them recharge their batteries, build their energy. Stabilizers, perhaps doing a tangible activity with a purpose, like repairing something. And also they like to feel needed. So having other people around them showing that they are needed and they are appreciated. And for the improvisers, some physical activity or crafting something, making something, playing a guitar or some new activity. So I'm going to pause there again, just before we go into breakout groups. To see if there are any questions or comments. And again, I haven't had time to have a quick look at chat, so I don't know if there's anything in chat I need to be aware of.
Just a beautiful quote from Mary.
All right. Okay. I can see something from Lynn there. Wouldn't that be an issue for introverts that might need time to process what the issue is? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hannah has.
Hannah.
Hiya. The thing that really resonates with me actually as an SF is writing down to-do lists, but having already lists that you've done and like looking back and being like, oh yeah, I did that, and that feeling of productivity, which sounded silly to me, but as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, that is me.
Yeah, that's really common. And my husband, ISTJ, does that too. And it's nice. It's a nice thing to do. I probably wouldn't work for me particularly, but for all of us, actually, we achieve loads of stuff in our lives, and we often don't give us that pat on the back that we did at the end of Catherine's session to really, acknowledge, gosh, how far we've come. I remember years ago, I started a new job and the HR director said to me, write down something now about your first impressions, and then in 6 months' time, get it out and see how far you've come in that time. And that's a really important thing to do. Okay, let me move on then to explain what we are going to do in the breakout groups. I've just lost my slides again. Here we go. Right. So what I'm hoping to do is that we'll go into some temperament alike groups. If there's more than one SJ, anyway, I'll let Nathan worry about that. Okay, good. And then we might have a couple of NF groups possibly. So what I want to do is bring this back to balance, this idea of the balance of motivation and well-being. Who's familiar with the wheel of life? Which is basically what's on this slide, as a tool in coaching. Few people familiar with it, So it's often used in coaching, and it's in the handout that accompanies this session. And what we often will do with a client is for each part of their life. So for example, I've got a little one I made earlier here. So for example, partner and romance, for example, you might get your coaching client for these different parts of their lives to score on a scale of 1 to 10 how satisfied they are with that part of their lives. So for example, if I scored partner and romance as an 8, then that probably means I'm okay with that. If I scored it down as a 2, it probably means it's an area that I need to address. So the idea of the wheel of life is to look at the different parts of your life and see how satisfied or happy you are with them. And if you're not, what can you do about it? And I've sort of linked this with this outer circle of the 4 core needs that we all share, because really you need to be able to meet those core needs in all the different parts of your life, whichever. So what I would like you to do in breakout groups is, and I'm just finding my slide again. Here we go. So reflect on how you meet your core needs in the main realms of your life. How do you currently meet your core need? What stops you meeting that need? Which core needs are you neglecting? And what could you change to better meet your core needs? And what helps you persist and resilient? There's a lot of questions there. I'm not expecting you to cover all of them. We'll let you have about 10 minutes in the breakout groups. If you've been able to download my handout from the conference website, there's tips there and there's more guidance, and these questions are there. I'll give you a quick example of myself in a way. In fact, I'll just stop. No, I'll leave the slide there for a moment. But for me, so theorist, high need for competence, I fulfill most of that core need for competence through my work. However, this leads me to 2 problems. One problem is when the routine demands don't allow me enough time to do the work that I really want to do. And at the moment, I like to write, as you know, I've written 2 books and etc. And I have had times when I feel very frustrated because I'm not able to meet that core need through my writing work. But the other way that core need becomes a problem for me is when I then spend too much in that part of my life. I spend too much on fulfilling my need for competence through my work, and I neglect friends, family, other relationships. So it's, that whole thing about having balance in these different parts of your life and how you meet your core needs. Right. So I think, Nathan, if we could send people off into some breakout groups, 10 minutes, and then when you come back, brief debrief, just share anything that you want to. If there's been any particular insights, we might ask, for example, for one key insight from each group. But I'd love to hear what thoughts you've got about that.
Excellent. All right, we have 10 minutes and we can begin. All right, so for the 3 of you who have not indicated your type preferences, you are welcome to join either the Guardian, Rational, or one of the Idealist groups based on your type preferences. And all right, so Lynn, Lisa, and Rowan, if you'd like, I can move you into a group or you can move into one yourself.
How do you move into one yourself?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'll move you in. No worries. I see your preferences there. Thank you. Yeah.
And Lisa, sorry.
Move me, sorry. I'm INFJ, so that would be Catalyst.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And Lisa?
Catalyst, please.
Yeah. I've just noticed, Nathan, you've used the Kiersey names, which is fine.
Oh, sorry.
Doesn't matter. It's fine.
Okay.
Right. Thanks to Nathan for assisting me. And what I'd love to do now is hear from the groups. I was delighted that we managed to have at least 3 of the temperaments represented in the groups. So I'm going to ask the people who were in the stabilizer group, which I think was Hannah, Lynn and Tim, just to share 1 or 2 thoughts, 1 or 2 insights.
We were kind of talking about how we all kind of associate with being organized, and that kind of need to organize every aspect of our lives to the point that it's good, but it can also be a bit of a detriment. Because we have this massive to-do list and we end up prioritizing that over perhaps like meeting friends and things like that. And it's kind of a to-do list that you have to complete before you can like give time to yourself.
Yeah.
So good and bad aspects of that.
So that's interesting, Hannah, from somebody with, ESFJ preferences. I would have thought somebody with those preferences would manage to give enough time to the personal relationship side.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess, to be fair, if it's for me, then I'll disregard it. So for example, if it's an activity that I want to do, then it'll be a low priority.
Right.
If it's that I've agreed to meet a friend, that'll be a high priority. I've agreed to them, they want to do it, and that'll make them happy, but if it's for my benefit, that's low on the list.
Yeah, interesting. Great, thank you. Anything else from that group? Tim, were you about to say
I think we have, I feel, a need to be useful.
Yeah. That's very, need to be useful, do your duty.
Yes.
So that you're of use to people, practical use to other people.
Yep, but to finish the job.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay. Anything else from that group, or shall I move on to one of the other groups?
I just thought of something when you had asked Hannah the question about, being able to meet up with friends and that kind of stuff. And I think what it is I know from my perspective is, I got to do the to-do list. But if somebody reaches back out and says, hey, you want to do this? And it's like, oh, okay, then I can give myself permission to get away from the to-do list and go do that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lynn. So how about one of the two catalyst groups? And I know it said idealist because Nathan used the Kiersey names. So I think Isabel, Mary, Rowan and Stuart, I think you were in a group together. So what thoughts or insights would you like to share with everybody else?
I think our discussion focused mostly on the need for harmony and getting along with each other, and people were talking about the challenges with other personality types that might be a little bit more combative in communication, or maybe kind of sometimes that striving for excellence that some types have might kind of rub up against the need for harmony in the group. But we were also talking, we were all INFJs in our group. So we were also talking about our own perfectionist nature and our own tendency to be perfectionists, but then having to learn over time to let some things go, and good enough is good enough. I think a few of us resonated with that, having to learn that.
Yeah.
Prioritizing what's important and actually what's not important.
Yes. And of course, INFJ is the chart the course or the navigator interaction style. So that's probably coming in a bit there as well. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Anyone else from that group want to add anything before I move on?
Just one thing I have is that, as sort of empathetic types, we're really good at, we recognize other people's core needs and will often move heaven and earth to meet them. But trying to explain your need for harmony to people who don't want harmony, how can you actually, I still struggle with that one. How can I actually explain to, particularly I'm thinking catalyst types who like to challenge everything, that sometimes please stop because you've exceeded my need for harm. If you go much further, I can feel my energy being sucked out. My value as a person seems to be being drained out of me internally. And so I will walk away from it rather than continue because, I do have that strong need for harmony at some point.
Yeah.
I'm much more robust and resilient than I used to be. I can deal with conflicts to a point, but if that's all there is, you will lose me eventually.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Dealing with theorists is a difficult one. I mean, so there's that thing. Well, theorists want truth, catalysts want harmony. So
yes.
Sometimes you just have to quietly nudge the theorists and say to them, look, you're pushing this too far. You need to back off a bit. It really doesn't matter that much. Harmony is more important. And I sometimes need people to say that to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The other catalyst group, I think Elizabeth, Lisa, Sharon and Teresa. What would you like to share?
We talked about as being catalysts. We do like to collaborate with others. We do like to see the full potential, not just in ourselves, but in other people, and how for myself, as an ENFJ, defining success not just for what we do, but how successful others are too. And really bringing out the best in those that we work with and collaborate with, and just seeing that bigger picture. And Sharon had also asked, you know, how do you work through if you've hit an obstacle? How as catalyst do you work through to that challenge to get to the other side where you can actually say you grab the brass ring? And a lot of times that is visioning, and for us feeler folks, what's it going to feel like when we get to that other side? That keeps us motivated.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, great. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Anyone else from that group want to add anything?
One other thing I would say is it was fun to hear Lisa talk about working on her doctorate. And it occurred to me that investing in our own potential, you know, that so many times we can be interested in everybody else's potential, but we sometimes forget the fact that our own potential and seeing that get better is a source of joy as well.
Yeah.
So it was just fun to hear about that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And sometimes you can give so much to other people that you neglect to give things to yourself. Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Sharon. And finally, I think Elena and Catherine, I think you two were together. So this is the theorist NT. So is there anything you'd like to share with everybody else?
I think we both really resonated with a strong focus on work as a primary zone of competency, and also managing to make other parts of your life in a way like work to attain competency in them. You know, like my hobbies, I tend to approach like work, and my relationships are part of my work since I'm a relationship coach. So I've found a way to kind of roll in competency with my belonging and connection needs. And for both of us as well, just understanding that we have different needs that are maybe atypical for our gender role expectations, and how important it is to find other women who have the theorist temperament to connect with and to sort of feel yourself mirrored by.
Yeah, and that's certainly something for me. I have a lot of ESFJ friends, and I just know I'm different from them. So yeah. Catherine, did you want to add anything to what Elena said?
I think the only thing I'd add was that for me, at least, sometimes lack of competence in one of the other areas outside of work can make me feel uncomfortable about how work is going in a way that makes no sense at all necessarily. And part of it, I'm sure, is the way Elena talked about how they're so interleaved.
Yeah.
Friends are also colleagues. Hobbies are also something I want to be good at, but it's such an important motivator that if my health isn't good or my finances aren't good, then I start to feel, well, maybe my work's not good either.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? How it's, and of course, all those needs anyway, we all have all those needs. But yeah, that's interesting. And I'll just make one quick comment from a theorist point of view, which is that need for competence. So I play tennis. Now I've learned through the years, but when I was younger, I just wanted to be good at it. You know, and now I accept I'm good enough for what I need, but there is that drive for competence. So, you know, people say, you know, if you think about you belong to some sort of, say, a tennis club, do I belong to it to belong, to fulfill my need for belonging, or do I belong to it to fulfill my need for competence? And I think as I've got more mature, that has shifted. So years ago, it would have been, I want to fulfill my need for competence, and maybe belonging comes second. Now it's belonging is much bigger part of it. So I think as we mature, we sort of are more aware of these other needs and how we can meet them in the different parts of our lives. Thank you. I'm just going to share one more slide, except I've lost it. Let me have a look. Let's get it back. Here we go. I'm conscious of the time we have just 2 minutes to get to the next. Well, not to get to the next thing, but because we have a break, don't we? Yeah, of course. So I don't need to panic. I don't need to rush. Thank you, everybody, for all your thoughts and so on there. I hope you found that exercise useful. There are loads of resources on my website. Actually, I have a thing called the Resources Hub, and there's little explainer videos about both interaction styles and temperaments. And there's other stuff there as well. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow me on Twitter. You can buy both my books on Amazon. However, the motivation book published by Routledge is not discounted on Amazon. So if you are thinking of buying that book, please go to Routledge. If it's not discounted there already, you can use this code EFLO1 to get the discount on it. So I'll just, so that's that. So I've stopped sharing. I'm going to stop the recording now.